Hello, hi. Welcome to the void a week later. You know, the void off to my left, right. That's my right. Your left. Um, yeah. Welcome back to the void. This is going to be great. Yeah. Okay, so, um, first things first, I'm actually recording this a week later, as I just said, I think. I don't remember anymore. It's getting a little hectic around here, and it probably won't stop being hectic until after like another couple of weeks. So, Third Age Total War is gonna come back, but it's not there yet. I'm gonna need time. But I do want to talk about The Last Jedi, in no small part because it's much easier to kind of just sit down in front of a camera and rant and ramble for, an hour or 2 hours. There maybe even be a third episode. I don't know. It depends on what I get to in this video and if I remember, if I forget a lot while talking this time. Because I know there's stuff I already forgot in the last video that I wanted to address that I hardly remember because that was a week ago. But it'll come up because again, this isn't some sort of organized discussion. It's literally I'm talking and talking and talking and it won't stop. Please, someone stop me. That being said, I did want to talk more about The Last Jedi because Star Wars is important to me, and I also enjoy these kinds of conversations. I enjoy listening to these kinds of I enjoy listening to this kind of stuff, and I enjoy doing this kind of stuff because it's really interesting. Kind of break down. Thank you, loud motor vehicle outside. I can hear you very clear. Yes, I can. Yeah, I can hear you very clearly out there. Sorry, I'm very easily distracted. I'm in a bit of a place right now. Anyway, so Last Jedi. First things first, I do want to talk about actually what I liked about the movie. By first talking about something I dislike that a lot of people like, or more to the point, something that I think is a very shallow way to like it, and that is the visuals. The movie being very visually stunning as it is. But I always find that like a bit of a silly caveat it's like what do I like about this movie? The visuals. And it's just like, to me it feels like, I gotta stop saying the word like, jeez. To me it feels as though the last, liking the visuals in a movie is one of the least, unless the movie is like, unless the entire movie's purpose is to simply just be a special effects extravaganza. Liking the visuals in the movie is basically saying that you like one of the least important aspects of the movie, which implies a lot of things about the rest of the movie, by its very nature. And of course, it's no problem, of course, if you're already criticizing the movie, but to say that, but if you say that, if the first thing you say when someone asks you what you like about a movie, and the first you say is the visuals, really you're liking in my opinion, you're liking one of the most superficial, shallow parts of the movie. The movie may be a visual medium, of course, but so is television and whatnot. But it's still one of the most superficial portions of it. You don't go back in your head and, unless something really stuck out to you, rarely go back in your head and say, wow, that scene, that beautifully shot scene really stuck with me for the past 10 years. You never do that. The things that stick with you are things like story, their character, their world building. Those are the things that are like really important. Like, gosh, I don't know why I keep saying that. I do not know why I keep using that word. But those are the parts that stick with you. They're the parts that you can go back through in your head and comb over and, really analyze. The visuals, not so much. Not unless there was a scene that really had an impact on you, and usually then had an impact on you emotionally. There was some aspect of it, besides the visuals, that, the visuals added to, or that added to the visuals. It's rarely the visuals on their own that ever move us emotionally. And it just kind of feels cheap sometimes when people say, the visual in this movie are really good. Okay, and anything that matters that you liked? That's my point of view on it anyway. Because, it's a Star Wars movie. By its very nature, it's often going to be on the cutting, by the very nature of being a Star Wars movie, it's going to be on the cutting edge of special effects, visual effects. It's going to be on the cutting edge of that. Or at the very least, it's going to do what's already been done before in a good spectacular fashion. You know what I mean? Even the least impressive movies visually, in my opinion, the least visually impressive Star Wars movies, in my opinion, which are probably Return of the Jedi and Episode 3. Episode 3 because Revenge of the Sith, because the CGI is so glaringly obvious and it just really screams in your mind, unlike even Episode 2. And Return of the Jedi because you can kind of tell the Battle of Endor is kind of done on a budget. You know, and even then, it's like there's a marked difference between the quality of the ground battle, which was really high, and the quality of the space battle, which is kind of middling. And I love the space battle, but the more I've seen it, the more I'm just like, huh, that looks really cheap. But but even then, it's just like there's still like good looking movies, and just it's like for a Star Wars movie, I can't even say that's particularly high praise because you generally expect a high level of visual fidelity when you're watching Star Wars. So on to something that I genuinely enjoy from The Last Jedi are the scenes in Ahch-To. Not all of them. More specifically, the scenes I enjoy the most are the scenes with Luke Skywalker. And it's in no small part because Mark Hamill is a fantastic actor. Mark Hamill, whenever he does a role, he always seems to give it his all. Like that just seems to be inevitable. He always gives it his all when he's doing a role, whether that role is Luke Skywalker or the Joker or whoever. He does a fantastic job. And, we've seen before, all the interviews of Mark Hamill before Last Jedi came out, and the not-so-subtle implications that he hated portraying Luke Skywalker in that way. And yet, whenever I see Luke Skywalker in that screen, he's giving it his all. He's doing his absolute best, and it comes through. And a lot of the time, and as a lot of his interactions with Rey and so forth are also really good. There's a lot of excellent moments on Ahch-To, and love or hate this movie, I feel like if you can't at least appreciate those aspects of the movie, then you're trying a little too hard to hate on it. Like whether or not Luke Skywalker should have been portrayed that way is an entirely different argument, but how the kind of job Mark Hamill did portraying that Luke Skywalker was phenomenal. And there was never a moment where I didn't appreciate. And there will be a couple of moments later on that I'm going to address where it's like there's like wasted potential because of that. Or at least one very important moment where there's a massive amount of wasted potential. All right, so onto the movie writ large. I feel like I should talk about the excuse me. I feel like I should talk about the political state of the galaxy a little more because the first video, which I haven't edited yet, but the first video, of course, focused almost entirely on the military tactics and the military ineptitude of both the protagonist and antagonist throughout the entire film. The reason that anything happens in the film most of the time is that the First Order and the Resistance are completely inept at actually trying to do anything about each other. Okay, I'm going to talk about the scene, frankly, that actually kind of, if you look at my Twitter thread on The Last Jedi, the scene that didn't aggravate me the most. The scene that aggravated me the most actually was the fight in the hangar after Holdo's sacrifice. But one of the scenes that aggravated me the most was when Finn and Rose are on Cantobite. That goes without saying. But when they're on Cantobite and they find the slave kids. And Rose, looks at the slave kid who's about to freak out, about to call for help. And she's like, no, shoo. And she has this little decoder ring. I don't know why she has a decoder ring of all things. And she twists it, and it's the symbol, it's the Rebel Firebird. It's not even the symbol. It's a symbol of the Resistance, but it's just the Rebel Firebird, let's be honest. And she says, I'm with the Resistance. And my reaction immediately to that was, what is the state of the galaxy right now that sentence has any meaning? Because, let's be 100% honest. What is the Resistance? The Resistance is basically, and I described it maybe a little extremely in something I wrote last year. I basically wrote the Resistance in space Hezbollah. And I don't mean that in the sense that, that it's fighting Israel or the Jews or anything. What I mean is that it's a space. This resistance is essentially a space terrorist organization funded under the table by by a legitimate government. In this case, the New Republic. That's what the resistance is. The resistance isn't the New Republic. It isn't even technically a proxy of the New Republic. The resistance is an entirely independent organization that happens to be supported by elements within the New Republic. The resistance isn't that big, it isn't that important, and yet the movie treats it like it is. The movie treats the resistance like it's this huge, important organization when it's, it's 4 ships, a couple dozen retirees, and a few hundred young guns who who apparently don't have anything better to do. Who aren't spending their time trying to persuade the New Republic to take the First Order more seriously. And I found that line absolutely maddening. Because, for all intents and purposes, "We're with the resistance" is a sentence that should have zero meaning in the galaxy as it is. Because the resistance isn't a major organization. It's a very minor organization that's fighting a clandestine war against the First Order, which itself is fighting a clandestine war against the New Republic. And this is the thing that maddens me, frankly, about The Force Awakens, is the fact that none of this stuff is ever fleshed out properly. J.J. Abrams created a scenario in which, J.J. created a scenario in which in which there's this war that resembles the Galactic Civil War, except on a smaller scale, but we're never given any reason to believe that this is a conflict that should ever exist. A conflict that makes sense. It's not a conflict that makes any sense whatsoever. And it drives me absolutely nuts because in a more properly fleshed out scenario, that sentence might have made sense. But of course, that sentence also only makes sense if situations like Cantobite, like this, this decadent, debased, world of rich people and human slavery and sapient slavery, I should say, even, and animal cruelty, all the political messaging aside, what is the state of the galaxy that this planet like Cantobite can exist without any sort of authorities trying to do anything about it? Because the reason, for example, say in Tatooine in Episode 1, in the prequels in general, where slavery exists and so forth, the reason that's a thing is because the Republic is so large and corrupt at that point that it can't do anything about the Outer Rim territories. The Outer Rim territories are basically on their own. They're nominally controlled by the Republic, because that's my assumption anyway, that the entire known galaxy is nominally controlled by the Republic in the prequels, but it's gotten so large and corrupt and bloated that a lot of the Outer Rim's planets just kind of fall and kind of just fly under the radar and kind of get to do whatever they want. And not only that, but the power of the Hutts allows them to kind of allows certain planets to operate independently and so forth. But that's kind of the implication based on the movies alone. Based on the movies alone, planets like Tatooine are outside of the jurisdiction of the Republic, not so much in that the Republic doesn't want it under its jurisdiction, so much as the Republic just can't exercise that level of control over such a far-off backwater planet. But what is Cantobite? Where does Cantobite factor into all this? Cantobite is such a large planet that it seems surprising almost that these sorts of things can kind of just fly. Given such a large and influential planet, it seems kind of weird that these kinds of things can fly. Now, I'm sure maybe Cantobite's explained in source material, but I'm not talking about source material. And bear in mind, I'm a person who loves source material. I love all the little essential guides and the cross sections books and everything. I love those things. I love the visual dictionaries and everything. I think they're really cool and interesting. But I'm talking, as someone who's only watched the movie, I'm talking about things that are only explained within... Why am I tapping my shoulder? I'm only talking about things that are explained within the movie. And Cantobite is not. Cantobite is this weird anomaly that doesn't really make sense based on prior context. But the fact that the Resistance means something on Cantobite, for that matter, where's the Republic in this regard? That sentence alone, we are with the Resistance, is maddening. And I just do not understand what the scenario is, what the political scenario is in the galaxy. Because bear in mind, we are still within 72 hours of Starkiller Base destroying the Senate. We are still within 3 days of Starkiller Base having, probably within 2 days, of Starkiller Base having destroyed, having destroyed the central leadership of the New Republic. And, so it's not like things have gotten completely out of hand within 48 hours or 72 hours. It's still like things would, like this, it's like the same galactic order should still, contrary to what the opening crawl says, the same galactic order should roughly be in place within that time span. I mean, unless the First Order has launched, like a dozen or scored or 24 simultaneous attacks across the galaxy to complete, to destroy the remainder of the New Republic's ability to remain stable and to fight back against the First Order. Unless it's happened the movie makes no indication of that. And the fact that the First Order has a rather substantial fleet pursuing the remains of the Resistance, which in and of itself seems completely ridiculous. It seems to me that the First Order will only need to deploy at worst a half dozen Star Destroyers, and they would have that locked down. And it's just, I'm already getting frustrated because I'm just, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about it, and it's, again, just like last time, it's making less and less sense as I think about it. But it's so maddening to think about. It's confusing, and I wish it made more sense. I want it to make more sense because it should make more sense. It's what we deserve. It's a Star Wars we deserve. We deserve a Star Wars that makes sense. And this doesn't. This is so flimsy and poorly justified. And I just want it to make sense. All right, so that realistically is my big issue with the movie. Or not even my big issue, but it's like that. It's like sort of like the big issue that doesn't like scream in your face, but it simmers just under the surface. Like all the like the water is boiling. Like the water is boiling, but it's not quite to the point where it's roiling on the surface yet. But you could see all the bubbles underneath and whatnot. And what that issue is what is the Resistance in this universe? Why does the Resistance's place in this universe make no sense? All right, so. Something that confuses me, incidentally, is, and this is a bit of a minor, well, not even a minor nitpick. This is another major plot point. Is actually the fuel economy in Star Wars. In Star Wars, we have never seen a moment outside of in the movies. We have never seen a moment where. I guess I'm going to talk a lot about world building rather than character. But we've never seen a moment where a ship has been out of power. The only times we've ever seen that sort of thing happen is either when an escape pod is running out of power. I think something that happened at least once in the Clone Wars. And one time that was a major plot point in Star Wars Rebels. Incidentally, the episode where the Purrgil show up. You can look at my Star Wars Rebels analysis video if you want to know a little more about that. But it's actually it's basically but that's kind of their out of gas episode though. Except for the whole Firefly reference there, except for the whole flashbacks thing. But that's the only time you've ever seen it. You would think, and for some reason though, the Resistance fleet, small as it is, has enough fuel for one more hyperspace jump, and I am absolutely baffled by that. Because even though the Resistance is just a bit player, it's still funded by Senate. It's still funded by the Senate, and you would think at the very least they would have budget enough to have enough fuel to operate independently for a while. And this is where this problem comes in with the whole, well, we got to run at sublight speed or else we're gonna run out of gas. It's just a massive plot contrivance, and that's a huge problem. The only this scenario is created purely to create purely to create a moment, purely to create the whole, the running plot, one of the running plots in this movie, and that is the chase, which itself doesn't make sense because why doesn't the First Order just hyperspace a couple of Star Destroyers ahead to cut off the Resistance, and then they're screwed? and what, they're in space. They don't have to think in linear fashions, and in fact, they don't. Given that when Finn and Rose arrive at the code breaker, they come up underneath the fleet, or the Millennium Falcon when Rey arrives comes in a plane, comes in a plane higher, above their supremacy, So it's like three-dimensional space. Why isn't the First Order doing anything about this? But anyway, it's just like the Resistance running out of gas just seems weird, just because this is really uncommon. And it's a thing that only makes sense with either something that has like a super limited store of fuel, like an escape pod, or the Rebel Alliance, which is, not really seriously funded by anyone at all. They're just kind of scraping by, and they're not even trying, and it's like the Phoenix cell, the Phoenix cell isn't even trying to, fuel like a large number of capital ships. They just have a couple of, like medium cruisers, and that's it. No, they don't even have medium cruisers. They have a light cruiser or a heavy frigate, depending on how you classify their carrier, and a bunch of corvettes. They don't, the Phoenix fleet isn't even that big. But you would think that like the Raddus, though, in its storage holds would have a bunch of fuel in it. Like, why don't they have this? What's going on here? I'm not really getting frustrated by this. It just rubs me the wrong way, because it's like, this is not something that's ever been an issue in Star Wars before. And it just is an incredibly arbitrary issue to have, very conveniently, to make this chase happen. What else was there? There was one other thing. There was one other thing about this that kind of irked me before I was going to get into something really important, but I can't think of it all. I can't think of it all of a sudden. Son of a gun. Because it was something. Because it was definitely something worth noting, but it's kind of just totally slipped my mind right now. But I kind of just don't want to skip ahead to the next part, because the next part's really, really important. And I just don't want to go back to this suddenly and just having just blown that really important thing. But dang it, I'm completely at a loss here. Oh well. Man, that had something to do with the fuel, though. I know that much. Oh well. All right, so I kind of want to get to this really important point, which is Princess Leia, General Organa. There was something about the whole, like people talk about laughing at her floating back to the airlock and everything, right? And man, do I agree. And bear in mind, it's not that I don't think that something can be done. It's like, it's happened before in Star Wars Legends, where people who are Force-sensitive Jedi, specifically trained Jedi, have gotten spaced, but you have used the Force to keep themselves, kind of in stasis until they can be picked up. That was a very important point in the second book of the Hand of Throne duology, I believe. I believe Timothy Zahn wrote that. Where Luke does that and has Mara Jade revive him, thereby cementing their relationship. I believe that was the book anyway. So it's like, it's not like there isn't precedent for it. The thing is that there's never any indication, first of all, that Leia is sufficiently trained to do something like this. And second of all, it's like there's no indication that she is trying to preserve herself. She just gets blown out into space in a massive explosion, which, if you think about it, probably should have charred her pretty crisply. Like it's not like they just got blown out into space. They also got engulfed in a fireball while doing so. Like getting exposed to a superheated environment like that probably should have, killed everyone in a very thorough sort of way, outside of just being exposed to vacuum, which should be instantly fatal anyway, unless, again, if you're using the Force, I'm assuming unless you're completely prepared for it. But the whole Leia floating back to the airlock thing, I don't understand why they didn't make that the moment where Leia dies. Because I just don't know what they're going to do with her now, because Carrie Fisher is dead. What are they going to do with Princess Leia now? Is she going to die off screen and we're going to start episode 9 with a funeral? What the hell's going to happen there? That is the most puzzling decision I have ever seen. Carrie Fisher's dead, so let's kill Luke and keep Princess Leia alive. I do not understand the thinking and the rationale behind that. That is the last thing they should have done. And frankly, that would have been a very graceful exit, all things considered, for Princess Leia, given that the scene was already filmed. That would have been the perfect scene to kind of get rid of her. And it would have had so much more meaning because they would have had to go back and reshoot the movie extensively to kind of replace Carrie Fisher, to replace Carrie Fisher's role in all of this. Because think about that scene. We see Kylo targeting the bridge. His thumb's on the trigger, but he knows his mother's there. Bear in mind that not even 48 hours before, probably not even 24 hours before, probably 48 actually, I don't know how long they were in hyperspace, but not even 48 hours before, he had just killed his own father after a lot of internal conflict, right? And at the very last second, he doesn't push the button. He doesn't fire his missiles. And then his wingmen do and kill his mother. Think about how that could have impacted the movie. Think about the kind of character moments you could have had. Kylo Ren, who just killed his own father, still could not bring himself to kill his own mother, and then his wingmen do it for him anyway. And imagine the kind of guilt he would be racked by. Because bear in mind, after this moment, it's like he's never affected by it again. And it's completely irrelevant anyway because his mother's still alive, and there's no moment here where the movie in any way addresses the ramifications of this moment. And that's so unfortunate. But think about the kind of character moments we could have gotten with Kylo Ren, who I think is one of the better characters in the movie. One of the better new characters in the movie, certainly. In the new trilogy, even, I should say. Think about, the kind of guilt he would have been racked by, instead of, think about, the kind of frustration he would feel. He was going to spare his mother, and then it didn't matter, and there was nothing he could do about it, and the absolute frustration that he would feel over that, about choosing to do that thing, and then having that choice taken away from him. I could imagine him say, I can imagine him just... Because you know how he smashes his helmet at the beginning of the movie because Snoke taunts him a little over it? And that's just so... That was such a dumb moment. Oh, my master taunted me about the helmet. I guess I better smash it in frustration. What if he smashed it in frustration instead over frustration about what happens to Leia? Just think about that for a second. Imagine him just angrily smashing his helmet because he just can't reconcile trying to be his grandfather, and yet, that's his, he's trying to emulate his mother's father, and he's just trying to reconcile that. And that's when he smashes them. Just think about that for a second. Think about the implications of that sort of thing. Think about all the serious character introspection we could have gotten out of Kylo Ren if that was a scenario we got. Leia's actually killed, and now he's racked by the guilt over it. And now he doesn't know what to do. Does he continue to follow Snoke? Does he strike out on his own? Does he turn good? What does he do? He doesn't know. And then that plays into the conversations he has with Rey, which I also thought actually were really good moments, except for the whole shirtless scene, which was really awkward. It was awkward and stupid. But imagine how that could have played in those conversations he had with Rey, which I thought were interesting. Interesting, but not properly explored. I'll get to that in a bit, though. Not only that we'd have that wasted opportunity with getting Leia out of the saga gracefully, but there's just so much wasted opportunity for Kylo's character, and it's just that is so fundamentally disappointing to me in so many ways. It could have been handled so much better. And, and in a way that wouldn't have been so silly with Leia floating back to the airlock like she's Mary Poppins, Mary Poppins with force powers that we never have any indication she can use or probably will ever use again. There's just those, and, opening the airlock with, without accidentally spacing everyone in that hallway. But anyway. But yes, And then, man, there's the conversations with Rey. Kylo's conversations with Rey and Rey's interactions with Luke. The reason Rey is called a Mary Sue, and it's very obvious in this movie, is that Rey, and not only does Rey never experience any challenges, she never experiences any sort of character growth. I would be irked a lot. I think everyone would be irked a lot less if Rey wasn't. It's not that Rey isn't even addressed. It doesn't even have any challenges. It's that Rey doesn't do anything. She doesn't grow in any way. She doesn't seem to learn anything. She just always believes the right things. She always believes the things the movie demands she believe. So she believes the Jedi are good. She believes the New Republic is good. She believes the Resistance is good. And she never questions it. She never questions these things. And it's so bland and boring. At least Poe is trying to challenge the status quo. At least Finn is self-interested. Like Finn has very selfish self-interest. He's only interested in himself, and he's interested in Rey's well-being. But Rey is so bland. Rey has no real motivations. She never questions what she's faced with. Even if she came to the same conclusions, it never feels like she's properly questioning what it means to be these things or to do these things or to act in certain ways. And that's so frustrating and disappointing because in the conversations with Kylo Ren, when she jumps in that dark side cave, when she gets angry with Luke when she finds out he lied to her about what he did to Kylo, there was so much potential to change the status quo there. There was so much potential to have her, and honestly, I really wish they'd gone this way. I wish they would have her slip to the dark side, because whenever you look at her actually doing things, she looks angry. She looks like she's tapping into her hatred and her aggression, into her anger, into her fear. She looks like she's using the dark side in both The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi on multiple occasions. She's not just focused, she's angry. And it would have been so interesting to have them explore that. In fact, I didn't think the scene where she fights and defeats Luke in the, that little stick fight, I didn't think that scene was actually so bad. Except they don't explore anything with it. They don't explore that moment where she feels betrayed by Luke. She feels betrayed by the notions that Luke, that she's believed about the Jedi and who Luke Skywalker is. She never goes anywhere with that. She immediately, and it's so jarring, she immediately goes right back into thinking, immediately goes right back into goody two-shoes mode, as it were. And that is such a wasted moment. Even if she would go back that way, ultimately, eventually, the potential for that moment to have her just, for a moment, wonder what it'd be like to become the antithesis of what Luke Skywalker is. I don't mean hopeful, but I mean as what he represents, not what he is, what he represents as a Jedi Knight. That, I think, would have been some of the most compelling storytelling in Star Wars I would have ever seen. Since it would have been such an interesting, a real subversion, not just a stupid Rian Johnson subversion where we don't get what we expect with Luke Skywalker not being hopeful but being a crotchety old asshole, or the good guys basically losing in the end. No, not that kind of subversion, but real meaningful subversion. Subversion that, not only surprises us, but makes us think about what's going on and how we got to this point. That is what subversion is. That's what real good subversion is. Good subversion makes you think about it and think about why the subversion is logical, why it's smart, why it makes you want more. And that's not what we get with Rey. We just get Rey just being the same person throughout the entire movie. She doesn't grow, she doesn't adapt, she doesn't even get hurt. She gets a little scratch on her arm, that's it. And I don't mean cutting a limb off, I just mean she doesn't get hurt in any way. She doesn't really seem to get hurt emotionally, she doesn't get hurt physically. Nothing happens to her. She's just the same. And I really wish that wasn't the case. Because it's so boring. It's not what we should get. We should get someone who's more interesting than that, someone who's more compelling, someone who just is more motivated than Rey. You know, because that's the other moment that, because that leads into the other moment about Rey that irks me, is when Kylo Ren is trying to tempt her to join him to change everything, to let go of the past and to change and subvert everything. I knew it was going to happen already because I already knew what the movie was going to be. But there was a part in my head, in my heart, that so badly wanted this movie to just take it in an unexpected direction, to have Rey join him, or to have Rey kind of persuade him into a bit more of a middle ground, to have something interesting happen instead of what we got. Because what we got was just generic, bland, boilerplate, light versus dark sort of stuff, instead of what it felt like was being set up, which was more gray. You know? Because there's nothing wrong with gray. Bear in mind, I do like clearly demarcated good and evil, right? There has to be a clear demarcation between what is good and what is evil. That's the only way you're going to get a gray in the first place, is if you know what is good, you know what is evil, and you know why most people kind of are in the middle. Why they kind of hover back and forth in the middle because they have to make decisions that aren't all good or aren't all bad. Stop that screensaver. Not that I want to see my face, it's just I don't know if you're going to disrupt the recording at all. But yeah, and this movie didn't give us that. You know, if you wanted to show us a Star Wars that really had grown and matured beyond the George Lucas era, that would have been the way to do it, to actually create complexity. You know, like Knights of the Old Republic did with Jolie Bindo, or with what we saw with Kreia in Knights of the Old Republic 2. You know, to see that kind of there's not as much clarity in what your role in the universe ought to be. You know, that would have been a lot more interesting than Rey is always good, and Kylo Ren isn't even always bad. Kylo Ren is actually his own actor. He isn't necessarily explicitly evil. He's his own actor. He refuses to kill his own mother. His pilots do that for him. You know, he kills Snoke out of self-interest. He wants to convert Rey, not necessarily to turn her evil, but to turn her into an ally. It's just like, there's so much potential here that is completely wasted. And it's just the most frustrating thing. And I just have to stretch here for a second because I am getting a little stiff because I'm sitting here for at least half an hour. I sit here for longer, but usually I'm focused on a video game or something instead of talking to myself in a camera. But, yeah, it's the wasted potential. That's what gets me the most about this movie, because there was potential there. You can see it. You can see the scenes and the characters building up to them, and then Rian Johnson's just like, but I'm not going to do that! Like a fucking idiot. And I'm just... It makes me sad. That's what it makes me. You know, I love Star Wars. I've loved Star Wars since before I can remember. You know, it's literally, I've loved Star Wars my entire life. There's never a day of my life where I've not been awake. You know, there's never been a day like where I've been awake and I have not loved Star Wars. You know, there has, I just don't remember it. So for all intents and purposes, that's the case. And to see Star Wars just become this sort of really shallow, cinema bait, it's beyond disappointing. You know, just to see The Last Jedi, which could have been so much more, not be that thing. It's just frustrating. You know? You think I should just... Sometimes I'm just thinking I should just end the video here, because man, oh man. Just thinking about that's kind of just deflated me. There might be a third part then. You know, I think I might make a third part for any other odds, and if I want to, I may make a third part of all the other odds and ends, because I really haven't talked about a lot of the other elements, because you know, there's Finn's sacrifice that gets interrupted, and I also just want to talk alternatively about the entire end of the movie too, because it feels like I feel like there was another lost opportunity there. But I kind of want to end this here because I just, I kind of just burned myself out mentally there, just thinking about what the movie could have been, and I'm gonna do that again in the next video too. So I'm gonna call it here. Thank you for watching me talking about The Last Jedi. One more episode to go because I'm not gonna stretch it into 4. And I'll catch you then. Till next time, everybody.